Do you trust your employees enough to never see them in person?
I think our lowest growth year in the tenure that I was the CEO was 30% was our lowest.
Big companies like an ADP, or for example, do you think these companies are moving fast enough?
I don't really see them innovating and creating that. I think they're buying and integrating into their platform to be able to support that. Going into Africa, for example, South Africa, huge tech talent there as well. As Americans, we think that's Africa, that's all the same in actuality.
To what extent do you think that this is just going to become more normalized, where every company is just kind of groups of people all over the world?
Well, I think that they're...
In this final episode with our global HR expert, we uncover the untold forces behind remote work, how AI is quietly restructuring the global workforce, and whether it's really time to start ditching that pricey office lease for good.
Right. And compared to kind of other kind of HR type of sort of solutions out there, whether it be like a bigger companies big companies like an ADP, or for example, do you think these companies are moving fast enough, or how do you see the adoption of technology among kind of broad spectrum of?
I think ADP is ADP for a reason, right? They've grown very quickly. They've been around for quite some time. They are the largest payroll provider globally. Right. I think they said 1 out of 4 people in the world get paid by ADP. Right. So there's a reason why they're there. But I think when you're also that big, it takes a lot longer to get things done. What ADP's methodology, at least from what my understanding is, how they grow is through acquisition. So they buy technology for them to be able to support that. I don't really see them innovating and creating that. I think they're buying and integrating into their platform to be able to support that. There are organizations that are growing as well, but when you get to a certain size, it's kind of inevitable. It's really your growth is through acquisition. I don't really see a lot of innovation because there's a lot of red tape at that point when you get to that size. When you look at publicly traded companies, it becomes even worse because you have to go through all of that red tape to get things approved.
Right. And at Helios, how do you find your customers, and where is it through kind of government contracts and such as similar to Atlas, or how's that?
Yeah, the clientele is similar from that perspective. I think, well, the clients that I get referred by are through lawyers and accountants and professionals who say, hey, I've got a client who needs this solution. I do a lot of webinars, I do podcasts, right, and I talk a little bit about it, but I try to be very pointed. I think anytime I've done any speeches or anything, had any conversations, I'm just trying to be as blunt as possible. Like, I've lived that life. I've understood from an HR perspective, understand from a CEO perspective what it took to run the business and some of the things that I lacked when we didn't have in the business. And so making sure that I'm creating that equitable opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, and sitting down with them and saying, hey, there's an opportunity to be successful here. These are the solutions that we can offer behind that. It's a lot of it through referral. Obviously, they find us through SEO and all of the traditional ways of marketing. But really, it's just education. We try to educate our customers on a different way to actually operate their businesses successfully.
Right. And do you find that your clients are kind of shifting in their practices fast enough, or kind of what is like because with any kind of new way of doing things, whether it be technology or culturally, with just kind of globalization, there's kind of some laggards and some early adopters. Where do you see the market in terms of that aspect?
The fast adopters are going to be your small business because they want to come on fast. They're willing to make those decisions to make sure they're setting themselves up. Where I find mid-market it's a little bit longer. I think our sales cycle is about 60 to 90 days there, but it's really to kind of walk through the process. We have a very big platform at Helios. It's 17 modules. So this is not a small buy. You can do it very quickly. You can enroll on our website, but realistically, it's a big platform. You're basically consolidating all the work that you're doing around the world. If you're using a global payroll provider, contractors, you're actually integrating all of that into one system and basically offboarding from that. So it's a big implementation. We can do it pretty quickly, but it's a big buy from our customers. It's cost effective, I will say that.
Yeah.
But it's a big change because you're going from maybe 10 different vendors or 15 different vendors to one, and then trying to make sure that you understand what type of culture you're trying to implement within the platform as well.
Right. And Helios is 2 years old, a year and a half, something like that. So you built out this platform pretty quickly, it sounds like.
Well, you don't see the white in my beard because I dye it, but it's there. And it's because I sat down. I remember when I stepped down as the CEO of Atlas, I remember sitting down and going, what do I want to do? I took a month off, and in that month I was very bored, by the way.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I've always felt like this is what I wanted to do. This is I felt like this was the niche that we were missing in our marketplace. And I wanted to build something that was going to be not only competitive, but also cost effective. So if you look at, for example, our pricing, I'm out here to obviously be successful, and I've got investors that I want to make sure we're making them happy. But at the same time, our price, we're a fraction of the cost of our competitors. And part of that is because we've done it through technology and automated a lot of the processes where they're managing in the back end more manual processes and procedures.
Right. So when you took that month off, did you have a clear, distinct vision of what the platform would be and all those 17 or so modules, or?
It was probably bigger in that dream. I will say that, and this is any business, right? What you envision it to be when you start it, and actually what it ends up being is very different. But I had this much bigger vision of what I wanted to do, and I realized that I can build that over time. But I wanted to figure out what's going to be the core components of the business that we want to be able to support our customers in, and that's 17 modules. And that sounds like a lot, but it was a lot bigger. But 17 modules were the key to make sure we can automate, streamline, and also make sure that payments are done correctly.
Right. So maybe can you give us some preview of what that bigger vision is, or the gap between where you guys are now and where you want to be?
Well, I'm going to have to be a little coy here when I do this, but yeah. So, we're very much focused on how an organization can manage their entire organization, not just their people, but their entire organization. If there's a customer base, if it's their vendor base, how they can actually manage that in one platform globally. Global payments is a big business. That's why you see organizations like TransferMate or Airwallex out there, because people have to move money around the world. Crypto is becoming a big one as well. And so they want flexibility in how they're actually issuing payments as well. We want to tap on that. We want to get in front of that. We want to be able to support that. You can imagine having one platform. And I'm not going to take a lot of credit of this. I do a lot of travel to Asia, and this is where some of this, I was inspired by this. They have platforms and apps that are like an all-in-one app.
Right.
So I think if we kind of leverage that mindset, if we can create something that's very simplistic for a business to operate their business, that's cost effective, I think it would be very successful from that. And at least from what we're seeing right now, from our beta testers and now our customers, this is exactly what customers are looking for. They've been asking for.
Right. And are you seeing any particular countries kind of growing more quickly in terms of kind of sort of employees on your platform, or any kind of trends in that direction?
Yeah, look, I think that it depends on what you're looking for, what you're saying, but there are organizations. The U.S. is constantly expanding and hiring talent around the world. You're seeing that in Europe as well. It's becoming a big trend. The biggest trend we saw was during GDPR and also and Brexit as well in the UK. That's where you saw a lot of expansion in Europe from that perspective. But right now, the biggest trend is Europe. The US is expanding outside the US a lot right now. And then they're looking for ways to do it more quickly. We're finding that when it comes to payments and vendor payments, we're seeing that that's happening a lot more in Europe, because they want to look at better way and faster rails to get money across Europe as well. And then we're also finding in certain countries like Brazil or some countries in the Middle East, that they want to have some flexibility in how they get money into the country. So we're looking at solutions to make that a lot more simplistic for companies to actually issue money in, or people to receive money, and then Brazilians to get money out of Brazil in a more cost-effective way.
Right. Yeah. So in my own experience, I've found that certain countries seem to have certain types of talent that is kind of more prevalent. Like in the Philippines, it's kind of the sort of call centers or customer service. And then in kind of South Asia, like India and so on, you get the tech folks, as it were. And
one of the trends with India, though, I think is very, very interesting. India is now becoming more of the outsourcer or outsourcee. So 10 years ago, that's what everyone did. We all went to India. Atlas had a very big team. Shout out to that team there. They're amazing. But you're starting to see Indian companies really grow and expand themselves. and they are looking to hire talent into other countries as well. They need to source that talent. I had a sales team in Atlas in India as well, and I had some really profound conversations with businesses out there and what they're doing. And again, that trend over the last 10 years has been they are now becoming the outsourcer. And I will tell you that probably in the next 10 years, they're going to probably have one of the strongest economies out there, just because of what they're doing and how they're managing that. I will say that you're seeing even some of that happening in China. The government is actually incentivizing Chinese companies to go out and do business abroad and actually paying them to do that. And so you're seeing Chinese companies go out and buy up companies or to start trending, especially in Latin and in Africa, from that perspective. And then now you're also seeing more tech hubs come out in Africa, for example, throughout the continent of Africa. You're starting to see more tech hubs come out in Latin America that you would have seen before. Colombia is one of the best markets out there. Brazil's a really good market. Costa Rica, Mexico. You're starting to see more and more of that happen as the economies are growing and expanding. A lot of that's just because of globalization.
Right. And are you finding that these countries like India and China who are becoming the outsourcer, are they kind of going to find lower cost sort of talent, or kind of experts at high cost? How do you characterize the kind of the type of talent they're going?
Well, I will say, look, there's also cultural nuances that come with all these particular countries, but I will say that they also understand that to get really good talent, they're going to have to pay what's common in that particular market as well. So I've had conversations with some of my Chinese customers who were doing business in Brazil and realized they had to pay a little bit more than they were typically used to. And for example, in China, one of the trends that I've seen with a lot of Chinese organizations as well is they're trying to hire Chinese individuals in those markets. And that's not always successful in certain markets. And so having to really learn cultural nuances, changes, salary expectations are some of the trends that we've had to teach them as well. Going into Africa, for example, South Africa, huge tech talent there as well. I've seen some really just amazing talent there, but they've been able to, they're starting to outsource as well. And now they're going into other parts of Africa. Had a really good conversation with the CEO out there. I had a big event in South Africa a couple of years ago, and he was trying to figure out how to support government contracts in Kenya, Nigeria, and other places. And, we think as Americans, we think that's Africa, that's all the same. In actuality, there's 54 countries in Africa that are very different. So having to help him understand and navigate the complexities of even just doing business throughout Africa was really important, and finding talent and trends that was going to work for him in Nigeria. Lagos was actually really good for him for tech talent. Support talent was actually in Kenya, and he was able to do that very successfully.
Yeah. So to what extent do you think that, if we go back to like the 1950s or whatever, it was very unusual for anyone to kind of hire even locally, remotely. And now this is, you get some companies where everybody's kind of remote. Actually, at PreScouter, we're mostly remote as well. And so to what extent do you think that this is just going to become more normalized, where every company is just kind of groups of people all over the world, versus there being kind of these centralized offices? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think that not every industry can go remote.
Yeah.
So it's going to be industry specific from that perspective. But I think that the ones that are doing hybrid or are doing remote, you're going to see more and more go that direction. It's cost effective. And the numbers also show that you're getting more work done versus that hour and a half it takes me to commute to work. Yeah. I'm actually waking up in that hour and a half I'm commuting. I'm actually getting things done. So employers are actually getting more bang for their buck from that. Now, I'm going to say this, and this is going to be a little controversial. Employers that feel like they can't trust their staff because they're working remotely, then you're not hiring the right people. If you don't trust them, you can't operate with them. You have to be able to understand that if you hired them, they're going to do the job. If you don't trust them, then fire them. Be done with it, right? Like let's not hurt a good thing for your business because you're not getting trust. And for those who are managing people, for example, supervisors who are looking at managers that don't trust their staff, maybe look at them as well. Maybe is it them, is that the issue? But I think the trend's going to be that you're going to see a more hybrid world. I don't see it going away. I think it's very important for employers to really sit back and go, hey, we've successfully done this. It's becoming more cost effective. Our numbers are better. We've grown and we haven't spent as much money on office space. or everything that comes with an office space as well. We say, when I looked at that, when I started Helios, I set up an office. And I signed a temporary lease for a year because I was like, I want to see if this is going to really work this way. And we told our staff, we will allow you to come in whenever you want. We want you guys to, when we want you guys in, we'll tell you, but how do you want to operate? We found that they were more efficient when they were working from home than actually when they came into the office.
Yeah.
Because when they came in the office, they were socializing. When they came in the office, it took a little bit longer for a commute, or sometimes they were stuck. And we live in Chicago, so sometimes the weather is not too good. So once we realized that just by sheer data, I canceled our lease and I said, we're going to be 100% remote. And if we need to give an office space, we'll rent like a Regis or a WeWork if we need to do meetings, but it's more efficient for you to work remotely.
Yeah. So in terms of, so in terms of the organization, both at Helios and Atlas, you've grown that company very quickly, those companies very quickly. Maybe you can give us some stats on the growth. And then I'm curious if you have any kind of management philosophies for how to manage that kind of growth or kind of...
Well, I can't give actual numbers, but what I will say though is we were able to, in 2.5 years, 5x the business at Atlas very, very quickly right before I stepped down. We had tremendous growth year over year. I will say, I think our lowest growth year in the tenure that I was the CEO was 30% was our lowest that we did. Even during COVID, we grew 48% over annual recurring revenue. So we've had very good success from that. And I will say it's, having a vision. I used to tell our team, we have to have a North Star. And we're going to row north in this boat. If you want to go east, if you want to go west, or you want to go south, that's all it's going to do is make us spin.
Right.
And if you're going to make us spin, you need to get off the boat. Right. Because I want to keep going north. Right. And so a lesson that I learned was hire slow, fire fast, and make sure you have people who are passionate about what they do. There are some days, and I say this, especially in startups, there are days that you're going to want a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
Sometimes two, right? But you're going to have to be able to the next day get back on the horse and keep riding. And I think that was really important. And then when I started to realize that sometimes people don't have the same vision as you, sometimes people are not the same vision as a collective, and those are the people that you have to weed out sooner than later. Give them a chance, give them opportunities, but you have to be able to say, okay, enough is enough. We have to move forward. One of the biggest decisions that I've ever had to make was stepping down from Atlas. And that was because I realized that the vision of where I wanted to take the company was very different from everyone else's. And I had a different vision I wanted to take. And I said, I need to get off the boat because I'm not following that same vision anymore.
Right. So, and in these companies, are there any particular kind of cultural values or things you kind of have looked for when you're hiring people that have kind of helped you think?
Yeah, it's funny. My leadership style changed over the years. My dad was a CEO of his business as well. And I looked at how he ran his business, and it was very old school, very, authoritative. This is, I'm a boss. And that was fine in the time that he was running his business. That was what the norm was. But I realized that I had to be a little bit more empathetic, have a lot more sympathy for my teams as well, realizing that we're all in this together, and really building something that was going to allow us to go north from that perspective. So being more of a leader that was inclusive was important to me. Sometimes you get to make the decision because you have to make a decision. You can't keep spinning, but making sure you have buy-in, making sure you're communicating, I think that was really important to me. I will say that the biggest challenge I had though, as a founder and CEO, is I had to realize that not everyone's going to be as passionate as you are. Right. That was probably my number one thing I realized. I would work, 18-hour days. I would be there for my team. I'd tell them, use and abuse me is what I used to tell them. But when I needed them, it was like, it's 5:00. Right. It's time to go home, or I've got things I got to get done. And sometimes, not saying that my team didn't work late. Sometimes they did. They're a phenomenal team at Atlas. But it was those times when I was like, why I'm still here? Why are you gone? And I had to realize that not everyone's going to be as passionate. And when I stepped down as the CEO, I had a number of staff, reach out to me and go, hey, we're not feeling the same passion that we did when you were there. And I said, I had to realize, and I had to tell them, I was like, this is not their company, right? This is not their company. And I think with that, this is a job. and they're going to be thinking about it very differently. They're not going to be as passionate about it. And that's not a bad thing. That's normal. And I had to make sure that that was very clear to teams that with that transition, what that was going to look like.
Do you think that's a kind of a cultural thing of kind of maybe Chicago, America versus maybe kind of a Silicon Valley or even China, the kind of the work ethic kind of mentality?
Yeah, I think it's also the individual as well. I think that, I always hate bringing these type of things up in these calls, but in these meetings, but I think that I was raised that I'm going to work twice as hard just because of who I am and what I look like. And so I've always had that kind of that chip on my shoulder is like, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to work hard. And I work my butt off to get it done. That doesn't mean that I didn't have great opportunities. I had phenomenal opportunities from that, but I had to prove it, who I was and how to get it done. And that's why I did it. I think that's why we were successful.
So that's how Rick Hammell sees the future of remote and hybrid work, and how technology can make global teams click. If remote work dies, at least we can say technology tried to save it. But hey, who needs an office when you can have boring meetings from the comfort of your couch? Well, to keep exploring the unhyped side of AI, you can sign up for our newsletter using the link in the video description, where you'll learn a lot more about the real world struggles, strategies, and tactics that organizations are using to take advantage of AI. Thanks, and see you next time.